My name's Mark Plechaty. My middle name's Walter. I go by Walt. We've lived in the South Haven community since 2009, but have been visitors here since we were in high school in 1973, and we camped on the dunes. And we got married when we were a month out of high school, and as we had children, we continued to camp all the time up and down the coast of Michigan, and South Haven became our favorite place. I had the opportunity to retire, and when I did, we tried to figure out where our happy place was and where we wanted to go. And we had another vacation house in another part of Michigan, but we decided to come to South Haven, and we've been here since 2009. Last September, I was watching the election of our council people, and in Ward 2, Wendy O'Nookie ran on one issue, and that was the proliferation of short-term rentals in our residential districts and the negative effects on the social fabric of those areas. She won 2-1. And if that was the sentiment in Ward 2, I was curious as to how the people in the other areas of South Haven feel. So I got together with a friend of mine, and I started knocking on doors, talking to people, and I had some signs made up, and they were the campaign signs from Wendy's election, Neighborhoods Need Neighbors. And I spoke with Wendy, our thoughts were in alignment, and I kind of took over her Facebook page and ran with the base that she had already established. I started knocking on doors, and so far I have knocked on about 300 doors. There's probably closer to 350 signs out there now, but I've knocked on close to 300 doors, and I've had 5 rejections for signs. One other note is I've paid for absolutely everything to do with neighborhoods and neighbors out of my own pocket. Nobody's contributed one dime. I have no ulterior motives. I have no baggage. I'm just a resident. You asked what the mission statement of Neighborhoods Need Neighbors. We just want what the residents want. Of course, the business district is very important to our town, but we are just a voice for the residents who feel that they haven't been heard. Wow. Well, since 2009, there's obviously been, because of the way, let me go back to the way that our short-term rental ordinance was set up in 2016 or 2018. There was a recommendation that was going to be put forth in the Planning Commission on a way to set up the short-term rentals utilizing distancing and density precautions. And those were thrown to the wind, and we went with a ratio. There is not one other town in the state of Michigan that uses a ratio to determine the number of short-term rentals in their town. We used a ratio of 1-4, pulled out of thin air, not based on anything. There are no towns in Michigan that use a ratio. So when they did that, the ratio for the city, 1-4, there's about 2,500 residential homes, so 1 and 4 became eligible to be a rental, but they didn't use any distancing or density. So they're all, of course, they're all amassed in the blocks towards the lakefront, and those are the residential neighborhoods that have been deeply affected. What I've seen, there's no kids. Um, the number of children in our schools is declining rapidly. Um, can't find kids to walk the dog or help do heavy lifting or rake leaves. There's just a multitude of things that have changed, and they're all, a lot of them aren't really measurable. And when I go knocking on doors and talking to people, they feel that there's something wrong with their neighborhood. They know there's something wrong, but they can't put their finger on it. And these unintended consequences, a lot of them are immeasurable, but we feel them and we see them. It doesn't feel, we don't have the sense of community that we used to have. The sense of neighborhoods. I can tell you that the group Neighborhoods Need Neighbors has had a really positive effect on drawing people together. Yeah, I've seen it change. You can talk to anybody that lives here full time and they've seen it change. So. There has not been one study that has been done that can show that short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods bring anything to the residents. Yes, they bring income to the stakeholders, and yes, they bring money to the downtown area, but they do not give anything back to the residents in the residential neighborhoods. The 300 doors that I've knocked on, I ask, is there one benefit to having a short-term rental next door to you? Not one positive answer, only negatives.
Even if some people would argue that the downtown is helped and businesses there are supported by short-term rentals and tourism.
They're supported by tourism, but they cannot give any specific numbers to justify that the short-term rentals bring any money into the downtown area. When the short-term rentals pull in, they bring coolers, they bring their food, they bring their booze, they bring everything they need for a nice weekend. They don't shop here. Yeah, maybe they go out to eat. Yeah, maybe they go out to the t-shirt shops. But all of the other services that they use, a family or a retired couple or a couple working from home would use those same services with no detriment to the no economic impact to the downtown area. I own three long-term rentals in town that I've owned for at least a dozen years since we moved here. I had a son who had intentions of moving here. We bought a house, gutted it, redid it, and he took a job in Vermont. So I bought it from him and I rent it long term. I've had phone calls from the superintendent of schools here in South Haven looking for lodging for teachers. We've lost 9 teachers in the last 4 years because they cannot find a place to live. So I had a call last fall from the superintendent stating that he had a teacher living in their car and did I have anything opening up. Coincidentally, I did in a couple of weeks. The teacher moved in, stayed for 4 months, and bought a house 30 miles south of South Haven and is commuting up here to teach. How long do you think that's going to last when winter hits? Well, I think additional housing has to be built, and South Haven has been working on it, and I applaud that. I think that additional housing of that type needs to be built, but because South Haven's only 3.5 square miles, we're kind of running out of land. So I encourage those type of endeavors to be undertaken, but we need to do it outside of town. And it doesn't have to be far out of town, but there just isn't any more land within town to be able to build affordable housing. Honestly, no.
No.
Honestly, no. I don't think you. I mean, the realtors claim that short-term rentals didn't have that big of an effect on driving up the prices. You know, who knows? Who knows how much, of an effect? It's lakefront property. It's expensive, But did it drive up the prices in the outlying? Yes, I would say yes. But what we've seen is an influx of couples wanting to work from home that are going to buy. They're not going to sit empty. And if it would have been done with distancing, we wouldn't have this problem. We really wouldn't. We wouldn't have this problem. The houses that I've knocked on, Mike, one of the questions I ask, would you rather have a snowbird living next door to you or a short-term rental? Unequivocally, they would rather have a snowbird living next door because they know who they are, they know their phone numbers, they know their kids' names, they know where they live, they know everything about them. I have snowbirds living next door to me. It's way better than having a short-term rental next door to you. I have sat on my steps and I like to talk. And I love talking to people. I love meeting people. I like tourists. There's this big thing that, they don't want tourists. They hate tourists. No, actually, I like people. I like talking to people. So a couple weeks ago, I sat out on my kitchen steps, like I always do, about 4 or 5 o'clock, and I start talking to people. And I started talking to couples and kids who were walking back, who looked like they were walking back to their short-term rental. Asked them what kind of, how's the water, just start a conversation, general conversation. And then I segue into, how do you feel about these neighborhoods need neighbor signs? And what do you think when you see them? They're really nice and bright and colorful, and they really brighten up the front of the houses. What do they mean? And then I explain to them what they mean. That we have a problem with too many, and the density and distancing issue. Once I explain that to them, they get it. They understand. They would not want this to happen in their neighborhood. So it isn't the tourists, and it isn't the residents. It is anyone with a financial interest who is pro short-term rental, and they are for the status quo, the way things are. And our population is dropping dramatically. We're losing 26 residents per month in the town of South Haven. 26 residents per month are leaving and not coming back. Every other town along the coast of Michigan on this side, their populations are increasing. Ours is declining. We're below 4,000 people, and every month we lose 26 people. Our town is dying, and everybody is just riding it into the ground because they're making money. And those are the only people who are interested in seeing this continue. People with a financial interest in seeing it continue. And most of them don't even live here anymore.